Greetings, vinyl community, and welcome to my vinyl community video number 100. I'd like to start by saying a big thank you to Jason Barre and Amanda Chowdhury of CatSynth TV for the really wonderful review they've posted on their channel of my albums, The Hip Crime Vocab, Rat's Alley, and Hurtleturtled Out of Heaven. And it really means a lot to get some feedback from these really stellar musicians in their own right. And I'd like to point people towards some of Jason and Amanda's music. I unfortunately don't have a physical copy of Amanda's really delightful new album, Meow Meow Band, to show, as I grabbed that one on digital before I was aware that there was going to be a physical CD release. But it's a really fun album, very accessible blend of pop, jazz, and electronic music. Amanda appears on the albums that Jason has put together under the Vacuum Tree Head and Nub Dug Ensemble rubrics. And this is the latest Nub Dug Ensemble album, Blame. 7 tracks, all with titles that are 5 letters long and begin with B. Jason and Amanda both play keyboards and electronics. Miles Boysen is on guitar on all of these. There's a lot of saxophone. Steve Adams on this one, and Jason Belenkes, I'm sorry if I'm not pronouncing that right, on this one, and both of them on this one. Really good stuff. Female vocals, sort of twisty, kind of RIO-like, rock in opposition-like, compositional strategies, and a definite accessible rhythmic bass. So really enjoyable stuff that's an avant-garde rock kind of format with jazz elements that's really powerful and enjoyable. Speaking of avant-garde jazz, powerful and enjoyable, this is mainly meant to be a catch-up video again. And I made a really good score last weekend to add to the vinyl finds. So I want to start out with the sort of crown in that score, which is Sun Ra's 1970 album. This is Nuit de la Fondation Meg, Volume 1. And there that is in writing, if my terrible French is unintelligible to you. This is obviously a live performance on the Shandar label. And side 2 of this, titled The Cosmic Explorer, is entirely devoted to a Moog synthesizer improvisation by Sun Ra. Sun Ra, this is 1970. The Mini Moog hadn't even gone into production yet, but Sun Ra managed to get his hands on 2 Mini Moogs. He was given a prototype by the Moog company, which he uses on this album. He got a second somewhere along the line, and I'm not sure how that happened. But he was, loaned the prototype by the Moog company, who never got it back, but apparently didn't mind. And the Moog piece on this, that, as I said, covers an entire album side, is incredible. It's so wild and noisy and free. And the Mini Moog was designed so that it lends itself well to the playing music in the conventional sense. You know, it's designed so that it doesn't have to be wild noise. It can be the kind of stuff that Rick Wakeman did with Yes, or Keith Emerson did with Emerson, Lake and Palmer. It's designed to be friendly to that kind of sound, melodic approach, but still with an electronic bite to it, but more conventional, tempered scale-oriented music, keyboard-oriented music. Sun Ra doesn't play that. Sun Ra goes bananas on the Moog, and that's right up my alley. From the same shop, the same day, Home by Steve Swallow. Settings of Poems by Robert Creeley. He has Sheila Jordan singing, Steve Kuhn on piano, David Liebman on saxophone, the late Lyle Mays on synthesizer, Bob Moses on drums. So partly that's familiar from Gary Burton and Pat Metheny's bands with a lot of those musicians. This is ECM, so it's got that very airy kind of sound. The recording is from 1980, and Steve Swallow, of course, on the bass. Between, Contemplation, album from 1978. This is very kind of meditative world music. Robert Eliscu on oboe is kind of the star on this one. Peter Michael Hamill on keyboards is also very prominent. There are a lot of musicians on here, but not everybody plays on every track. So you have Eliscu on the oboe, Peter Michael Hamill on organ and piano. Tom Vandergeld is on vibes on just one track. There's a tabla player, so there's a lot of Indian sound on this, as well as a tambura to get that Indian backing. Really sweet album, and I've never seen this before, so it was a really nice find. Also, Joan LaBarbera, voice is the original instrument, solo vocal improvisations. She does, on the opening piece, an analog to the circular breathing technique that wind players use, such as saxophone players who can fill their cheeks up with air and expel that air through the instrument while inhaling through the nose. Now, a vocalist can't do that because you can't vocalize just from air that's held in your mouth. So she does an alternating inhaling and exhaling technique. So you can always hear the break between the inhale and the exhale, but she uses that by placing the break in different points. She does a descending and ascending glide, alternates up and down, and places the inhale-exhale break at different points. It begins with, the simple and obvious. You exhale, you descend to a point, and then there's the break, and you exhale. See, I can't even keep it straight between inhale, exhale, and ascending, descending, but she manages to keep it straight in her piece, which is a circular song. She also does a piece, side-long vocal extensions, where she does some electronic treatments to the voice, and that is really, really something I enjoy hearing. This is on the Wizard label. And some hardcore electronic music, Image Fantastique. I've no idea why the title is in French, but it is. This is on the Limelight label in one of these silly unipacks that take the record out from the center. So there's the Limelight label. Classic electronic music, pieces by Luciano Berio, including his Omaggio a Joyce. So anything to do with James Joyce is going to grab me. Bruno Maderna, Luke Ferrari, Yanis Xenakis, his piece Orient Occident, which I think is also out on the Nonesuch label. And a very gritty brown inner sleeve that you don't want to use. Yet more electronic music. This is a just released reissue of Doug McKechnie's San Francisco Moog, 1968 to 1972. Amazing cover. As you might guess, this is a very psychedelic approach to the Moog. Very meditative, a lot of drony sounds and repeating mantra-like ideas. So very spacey. And custom inner sleeve, and this just nice A and B labels on the VG Plus label, and this is available through Bandcamp. This is not. This is old Victor Concept. This is a free rock album. It's an improvised, very random, free sound featuring sax and bass clarinet, a lot of percussion, regular clarinet plus sax, piano, cello, violin, and Miles Boysen, whom you might recall from earlier in the video. Pay attention, there will be a test later, on guitar, alto sax, piano, gong, and chimes. And Valerie Jean Fisher, voice on Toasterland. All pieces are improvised. This is from 1980 on the wonderful Random Radar Records label, home of the Muffins, who have a huge box set retrospective coming out soon. This was unfortunately damaged in the mail. I think this was a much nicer looking cover until the U.S. Postal Service got a hold of it, and they really creamed the box. I was grateful that the vinyl wasn't damaged because they did a number on that box. Manège from Canada, Québécois band, progressive rock with strong classical leanings, and I showed one of their albums quite recently. I found this one, their first album, which I had never heard before. I didn't even realize I hadn't heard their first album. And this is great. If you like the more light and mellow progressive rock with, as I said, strong classical influence, this is for you. A lot of flute, clarinet, and keyboards. But guitar is strongly in evidence too. One of the really hot Quebec prog bands. Stefan Mika's Ocean. This is on ECM again. Not really oceanic to my ear. The album begins with a piece for voice, sort of how would you describe it? Kind of like the way a Muslim muezzin intones the call to prayer, that kind of vocalizing. 6 hammered dulcimers overdubbed, and ney, which is an Eastern woodwind instrument. He has pictures of a couple of the exotic instruments that he uses, because that's always his technique, instruments from all over the globe. Part 2 transitions from that very stringy sound with the hammered dulcimer, which is, 6 of them overlaid. It's almost like a kind of tack piano effect, with, as I say, that very solemn kind of vocalizing over it that sounds almost prayerful. For show, which is the kind of mouth organ. Shakuhachi, which is the Japanese flute. 3 Bavarian zithers, which is similar to the dulcimer, and 2 hammered dulcimers. So part 3, 3 hammered dulcimers and the shakuhachi, and part 4 is the show played solo. This is actually the same piece, the show itself and the head of the show. This is his album from 1986, dedicated to his mother and father. What a nice boy. Some really cool, swinging, energetic jazz from Eddie Lockjaw Davis with my girl Shirley Scott on the organ. Shirley Scott's on it. I'm really going to be paying attention to her, and she plays really punchy comping on this. Whenever she's not soloing, she's just really dynamic, as I say, punchy. She's stabbing those chords, and just keep variety. She'll, alternate the stabs with some long rolling sounding chords and then hit you again with the stabbing comping. So really worth it just for her playing, but you can't go wrong with Eddie Lockjaw Davis either. This is from 1959 on Prestige. I love Prestige. Blue Note gets all the love, but I love Prestige. This is not an original from 1959. This is a 60s copy with that blue Trident label. And a funny typo that occurred on both this and the original, where intermission riff is titled on the label Intermission Fifth. Found this one for 49 cents in a bargain bin. Kenny Burrell, God Bless the Child. It's resisting me. This was still in the shrink wrap when I got it, and I think it's so unusual to get a gatefold album that's been used, but is still in the shrink wrap. So previous owner never bothered to see what was inside the gatefold. That didn't stop the laminate from deteriorating, so there's some peeling going on, even though, especially here, right by the open section. So even the shrink wrap didn't protect it from that. But yeah, it was brand new, crackles when I try to open it. And great inner fold photo of Mr. Burrell. What I was trying to show was the cover of this is Vietnam era, you can tell. This is 1970. Arrangements by Don Sebesky. It's got that CTI orchestral sound to it. Really nice version. I wasn't too crazy about the opening, Be Yourself. It sounds a little bit like it's going to be a little too syrupy, but this turns out to be a really nice album. But as I say, definitely that CTI, I've got my mind stuck on ECM, with great players. Ron Carter on bass, Billy Cobham on drums, Hubert Laws on flute, Hugh Lawson on piano, Ray Barretto and Airto Moreira on percussion, and a cello section. Another album that's sort of jazz classical mixed with strings, Keith Jarrett, Arbor Zena. This one is on ECM, and it's an early classic ECM release at that. Keith Jarrett on piano, Jan Garbarek on saxophones, Charlie Hayden on bass, and a string orchestra. Particularly interesting piece is Solara March, which has that very Latin feel that Keith Jarrett brings to some of his compositions. And here it is dedicated to Pablo Casals and the Sun. The other pieces are Runes, dedicated to the Unknown, and the side-long and long side. This is a 28-minute piece titled Mirrors, dedicated to my teachers. What a good boy. Recorded October 1975. Keith Jarrett. More 70s music, Charles Mingus, cumbia and jazz fusion. This is fantastic. 2 side-long pieces. The title track, Cumbia and Jazz Fusion, and side 2 is Music for Todo Modo. And the Cumbia and Jazz Fusion, as the name implies, is based on traditional Latin sound. So it's got a big percussion section, lots of percussion, amazing composition, very fun, very musical, great stuff. The Todo Modo piece is more in a kind of chamber jazz bag. Even though it's a large band, it has a lot of orchestral woodwinds to it. There's some oboe in there, there's some bassoon in there, so a little bit more classical, but Mingus never lets you down. And this is that one may be the last one that he actually played on, because it was pretty late in his life. I think after that he was still composing but was unable to play on the records, as on an album I showed recently, Me, Myself, and I. Just got a few albums on sale through Plaid Room Records, some cool colored vinyl reissues. David Bowie Low. This is my favorite Bowie album. This is the one that turned me into a fan. Before this album came out, I liked a lot of Bowie's songs and heard him on the radio. Never bought any of his records until this one. I heard this one, somebody sent me a cassette of it, and I thought, this is just solidly great stuff. It's also my favorite Bowie album cover. I love that image from the man who fell to earth. Still. It's got a bunch of stuff inside. It's got a record with the fake RCA logo turned into a Bowie logo. And this is the new orange vinyl release. It came out not very long ago. Another inner sleeve for no apparent reason. This is apparently supposed to be a reproduction of an original inner sleeve. It's just a plain blank sleeve without a lining. This sleeve that the record actually comes in has a rice paper type lining. And then there is a separate sheet with the credits. In America, those credits were printed on the inner sleeve, but I guess that must not have been the case in the UK if they give you this format with the separate inner sleeve and sheet. And the one thing you don't get in here, which was in the previous regular black vinyl version of this reissue, was the flyer for the David Bowie fan club. They included a reproduction of it with, in teeny tiny print on the back, "This is no longer valid. You can't join the David Bowie fan club through this flyer." But I wonder if they got a lot of people trying to who didn't see that teeny tiny message. And so they decided to avoid trouble by not including it again. Soundtracks, also a new reissue of an album that I had before, but this one is on very groovy purple vinyl. Couldn't resist that, at least not at a sale price. The Bowie was fantastic. It was like $15. Couldn't resist that for sure. This one was a little more, but come on, it's purple vinyl. Gotta have it. My old copy will find another home. And it's got the liner notes on the inner sleeve, nice photos, very cool. This is a great album. Not one that I've listened to all that much over the years, but She Brings the Rain is just an incredible song. Their sort of jazzy number. And more from Can Delay, 1968. Actually recorded 1968 and 1969, according to the credits on the back, at the band's Castle studio, the Schloss Notwendig, as most of their albums were, if not all. This is being very early. This is the album that could have been their first album, but wasn't released at the time, so it came out later as an archival release. This being very, very early in the band's history is very raw, even crude. Musically, it's got a lot of that kind of same world as the Velvet Underground, which you still heard on their real first album, Monster Movie, that I showed not long ago. And like that one, this is a new colored vinyl version of the reissue. I'm losing the inner sleeve. On pink vinyl. Still a really great album. Starts off quite wild with Butterfly. It's just crazed, hurtling rock, ending with the deathless couplet, home again, jiggity jog, hope you can blow your mind, you fat, fat frog. And they continue the amphibian theme in the last track, Little Star of Bethlehem, which tells the tale of Froggy and Toady and their tangerine seeds, and also makes an important announcement about the coat hanger. There's a really wacky track called Pnoom that's extremely fun to listen to, very, very brief, less than half a minute long, and a lovely plaintive ballad, Thief, sung yearningly by Malcolm Mooney, the vocalist on these very earliest Can sessions. And again, nice fancy inner sleeve with... You cannot use these inner sleeves. These are the most staticky inner sleeves imaginable, and it takes an act of Congress to get the record out because the static cling just welds the vinyl to the paper. Another new reissue, The Mothers, Fillmore East, June 1971. This is the new triple LP edition of the album that is so legendarily filthy that I've told the story before of how when this album came out, my family's house was being remodeled, so I didn't have a door on my bedroom at the time. They hadn't completed the doorway. So I brought this record home. I had to play it really softly so my mother wouldn't hear the words. But this includes the original album plus the legendary performance with John and Yoko sitting in with the band for their encore, and a full side devoted to King Kong solos, another side devoted to Billy the Mountain, an alternate version of the piece that appeared on the Just Another Band from LA album that followed this one. And that actually takes up most of sides 5 and 6, and then there's some promotional stuff and singles mixes filling out the final side. Finally, JeanMichel Jarre, Equinox. This is his second album following the excellent Oxygen, I don't know how to pronounce that in French. But this is very much in the same bag, a very enjoyable, lighter side of electronic music. It's like Tangerine Dream, but without so much of the exploratory feel. This is a bit more comfortable, you might say. A bit more bouncy, but not really, not in an overtly commercial way. So, nice, enjoyable album from JeanMichel Jarre. Thank you very much for listening to my rambling. That's all for now. Be well. I can't believe I've done this 100 times over the years. Come back for more later, and you'll come back too because you're gluttons for punishment, aren't you? Bye-bye.